We often believe that if you're not sharing your life online, you must be missing out or hiding something. But what if choosing silence is actually a powerful way to be present? In an era where our lives are measured in pixels, posts, and impressions, not participating can feel almost radical. We live in a world that rewards visibility, where being unseen is often equated with being unimportant. The person who does not post disrupts this silent contract. They step outside the expected rhythm of public sharing, and in doing so, provoke quiet curiosity. Why are they silent? What do they have to hide? Yet perhaps the better question is, what have the rest of us lost in the noise? Silence in this digital age has become a form of psychological resistance. Not the loud, confrontational kind, but the subtle, deliberate kind that comes from introspection and self-possession. The person who chooses not to post may be doing something profoundly intentional, creating a boundary between self and spectacle, between living and performing. The assumption that we must document to exist is relatively new in human history. For centuries, existence itself was evidence enough of life's worth. Today, however, many feel that unshared moments are wasted ones, that private joys are incomplete unless validated by public reaction. The non-poster subverts this cultural logic. They remind us that the most meaningful parts of human experience often resist translation into images and captions. From a psychological perspective, the choice not to post can arise from various motives, each rooted in a desire for authenticity and inner coherence. Some abstain from posting because they feel the subtle exhaustion of performance. They sense that what social media demands is not the self as it is, but a self constantly curated, edited, and presented for consumption. It is not merely a tool for connection, but a stage. And not everyone wishes to live a life of perpetual performance. There are others for whom silence is a form of protection. The online world, for all its openness, can be intrusive, a space where personal boundaries blur easily. To withhold one's life from public view is to reclaim a sense of ownership over one's experiences. It is to declare, even quietly, that not all things sacred should be shared. There is power in that restraint. It suggests that meaning does not always need an audience. Psychologically, we know that human beings have an innate need for both connection and autonomy. Too much of one without the other leads to imbalance. Social media often magnifies connection at the expense of autonomy, tethering identity to constant feedback loops. Likes, comments, shares. The one who does not post, or posts rarely, may be guarding their autonomy against this invisible dependency. Their silence is a way of saying, I exist, even without your reaction. Carl Jung once observed that individuation, the process of becoming one's true self, requires withdrawal from the collective at certain stages of life. He warned that immersion in the crowd's noise can drown out the voice of the psyche. The digital crowd, though virtual, operates under the same psychological principle. The more we invest in external affirmation, the harder it becomes to hear our internal truths. To not post, then, may be a small but profound act of individuation, a retreat into inner dialogue amid an age of outward display. Consider, too, the philosophical dimension of silence. The ancient Stoics, Epictetus, Marcus Aurelius, taught that peace of mind comes not from external recognition, but from internal alignment. They spoke of mastering one's reactions to the world, not the world itself. In that light, the non-poster's silence can be seen as a modern Stoic act, a quiet refusal to chase validation from forces beyond one's control. Their satisfaction is inward, not dependent on the digital applause of strangers. But this silence is often misunderstood. In a culture that celebrates transparency, withholding can look suspicious. To many, not posting appears antisocial, disengaged, or even lonely. Yet loneliness and solitude are not the same. Loneliness is the absence of connection. Solitude is the presence of self. The person who does not post might not be isolated at all. They may, in fact, be more connected, just differently. Their connections are often deeper, grounded in lived experiences, rather than public documentation. We should not underestimate the cognitive fatigue of living in a world of endless comparison. Each post we see invites a subtle psychological evaluation. Am I doing enough? Am I as happy, as successful, as loved? The constant exposure to others' highlight reels creates a distortion of reality that psychologists call social comparison bias. It erodes self-esteem and fosters anxiety by creating the illusion that one's life is perpetually behind. Those who refrain from posting may simply be choosing mental clarity over this emotional treadmill. They protect the sanctity of their attention, the most precious currency of the mind. Privacy in this sense becomes not a retreat but a refuge. To maintain it is to preserve a sense of mystery about oneself, something that modern life often neglects. In a world obsessed with transparency, mystery becomes a rare form of beauty. The person who doesn't post may intuitively understand that not everything valuable should be exposed. Love, grief, joy, and personal growth. These are sacred processes that lose their depth when constantly translated into digital symbols. From a cognitive behavioral perspective, this restraint can be seen as emotional regulation. Social media amplifies emotional volatility. It rewards outrage, exhibitionism, and immediacy. The deliberate non-participation in that cycle reflects self-regulation, a capacity to resist impulsivity and preserve emotional equilibrium. In short, those who don't post may simply be practicing psychological hygiene in a polluted digital environment. Of course, not all silence is serene. For some, not posting can stem from fear, the fear of judgment, rejection, or inadequacy. Social media, by design, exposes one's self-image to the court of public opinion. If one's self-esteem is fragile, that exposure can be terrifying. But even here, the choice to abstain can be healthy. It signals self-awareness, a recognition of one's vulnerabilities, and a decision to protect rather than expose them. Self-protection, when conscious, is not avoidance. It is wisdom. Others withdraw because they feel alienated by the superficiality of online interactions. They crave depth in a medium that often trades it for speed. They prefer conversations unmediated by algorithms, those that unfold slowly with eye contact, pauses, and silences. In a sense, they are romantics of reality, yearning for authenticity in a world increasingly simulated. Erich Fromm, in The Art of Being, argued that modern humans have confused having with being, that we define ourselves by what we display rather than what we are. Social media amplifies this confusion by turning identity into a consumable product. Those who choose not to post may be resisting this commodification of the self. They do not wish to turn their existence into content. Their silence is not emptiness. It is integrity. This choice also reflects a nuanced understanding of attention. In psychology, attention is not infinite. It is selective and exhaustible. The act of constantly monitoring one's online image, curating, editing, responding, consumes enormous cognitive energy. Those who refrain from posting may be reallocating that energy toward inward growth, creativity, or presence. They understand that attention given to the screen is attention taken from the self. At the heart of this lies a profound philosophical question. What does it mean to exist in a world that demands evidence of existence? For centuries, philosophers have argued that being is self-evident, that existence precedes expression. Yet in the digital era, we often invert this logic. If I do not post, do I still exist in the minds of others? This existential anxiety underpins much of modern online behavior. The non-poster challenges this anxiety. Their quiet confidence says, I do not need to be seen to be real. This does not mean that those who share are shallow or misguided. Expression can be a beautiful act of connection and creativity. But the point is that there are many ways to engage with life's meaning. Some express outwardly, others reflect inwardly. The danger lies in assuming that one mode is superior. To live authentically in the digital age requires awareness of both, the need to connect and the right to remain silent. There is also a sociological dimension. In communities where image and reputation are currency, the act of not posting is an implicit critique of those value systems. It says, my worth is not contingent on digital perception. This quiet defiance can unsettle those deeply invested in external affirmation. It is not aggression, but it is independence, a refusal to play by the invisible rules of validation culture. The irony is that social media promises connection, but often delivers fragmentation. Relationships online are broad but shallow. They connect many but deepen few. Those who abstain may intuitively seek the opposite, fewer connections, but more profound ones. Their silence becomes a space for depth, a counterbalance to the shallowness of constant exposure. In psychoanalytic terms, we could interpret this behavior as an expression of self-containment. Freud described maturity as the ability to love and to work. Both require focus, patience, and privacy. The person who doesn't post may be channeling their psychic energy into these real-world pursuits, rather than dispersing it across 1,000 transient interactions. Their attention, unlike the scroll, has an anchor. There's also an ethical element. Some non-posters feel a moral discomfort with the manipulative architectures of social platforms. They recognize that these systems are designed not to connect, but to monetize attention. In this sense, their silence becomes an ethical stance, a quiet protest against the commodification of human emotion. It's not disconnection from society, it's disconnection from manipulation. To those who live by sharing, this might sound cold or elitist, but it isn't. It is simply a different form of engagement, one that values contemplation over exhibition. The philosopher Søren Kierkegaard once said, "The crowd is untruth." He meant that truth is found not in public opinion, but in inward honesty. Those who refrain from posting may be guided by this same principle. They prioritize the authenticity of inner experience over the fluctuating tides of public reaction. Yet their silence is not static. It breathes. It evolves. It invites presence in the moment, something social media often distracts from. To experience a sunset without reaching for a phone, to laugh with a friend without recording it, to grieve in private. These are acts of pure human being. The person who chooses not to post may be reclaiming this simplicity, the right to just live. Of course, there's a paradox here. To talk about those who do not post is to make them visible in their invisibility. But perhaps that is the point. Their absence reminds us of what we've forgotten. Silence in its truest form is not emptiness, but depth. It invites reflection, not attention. When we meet someone who is comfortable with that silence, we often sense something different about them. They listen more than they speak. They seem grounded, less swayed by trends, less frantic for recognition. This composure is not detachment, it is centeredness. It reflects a self that is internally validated rather than externally constructed. And that may be the greatest psychological insight of all, that the healthiest form of self-expression is not always external. Sometimes it is the quiet confidence of knowing who you are without needing to prove it. So perhaps we might reconsider what it means to be social. True social connection is not measured in followers or posts, but in understanding, the ability to encounter others deeply, even briefly, without performance. And true expression is not the constant unveiling of the self, but the thoughtful articulation of what truly matters. If you find yourself among those who rarely post, do not mistake your silence for absence. It may, in fact, be a form of presence, an awareness that life's most beautiful moments often lose their texture when flattened into images. You are not invisible. You are simply living beyond the frame. And if you are someone who feels compelled to share often, perhaps this reflection can serve as an invitation to pause, to ask whether the need to be seen sometimes overshadows the joy of simply being. There is no moral superiority in silence, only a reminder not all truths need to be broadcast to be real. In the end, the psychology of those who don't post is not about rejection, fear, or isolation. It is about discernment. It is the choice to engage with the world on one's own terms, to value depth over display, authenticity over approval. It is, in its quiet way, a declaration of freedom, because in a world that demands you share to exist, choosing silence is not disappearance. It is the art of being seen by yourself first.